Society students.
Call this meeting to order.
I know, we have gavelers in here for the town meeting, yeah.
Let us pray.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Sykesville Townhouse. I'm Adrienne Smith and I'm the curator of the Gatehouse Museum, and we're very glad to host Rachel Jenkins of Photo Archivers today in preparing your legacy collection for printed photos the first step, so you can find out how to tackle these tasks that you have in front of you. Our speaker today started the process of becoming photo archivers in 2010 in order to create a no judgment place where people can receive help making their memories and mementos accessible. As a public history museum, the Gatehouse and its staff identify with this desire to learn the stories and to save them. And I know that all of you here are here because you want to learn how to do this with your own memories and share those with those around you as well. We're working together right now with Photo Archivers with our own professional collection as well. So Photo Archivers handles all sorts of different types of tasks. And in particular, we're taking our 5,000 images in our newspaper collection from the Sykesville Herald, and we're digitizing them and archiving them in a much more up-to-date way than what had been done previously. We'd like to thank you all for attending this seminar tonight, and we hope that what you learn is an inspiration. Thank you so much, and Rachel, I will give it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Adrienne. I appreciate it. Yeah, so everybody has a legacy, whether you know it or not, right? And it's right now probably buried deep in some boxes somewhere, either in your attic or your basement or in a closet somewhere. And typically it's a process that feels incredibly overwhelming for most people. So just knowing how to get started can be hard, or maybe you've started it half a dozen times and you get stuck. So while tonight's not going to be, I give you the end-all be-all solution for all of it, I'm going to try and help you get some ideas in place that will allow you to at least get started and maybe start to reduce the size of your collection. That in itself might be the first step in relieving some of the overwhelm. Preparing this for the next generation, they don't want the 57 boxes, right? They want a finely curated collection that they can then create books with or share with their own children. And so the steps tonight are pretty high level. I'm not going to be able to cover everything in an hour that I've learned in 14 years, but it's kind of a good place to start. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are just, beginning with the end in mind, trying to get a vision of what you want your collection to look like and who it's for. Right? Think about the people that you're going to be turning this over to at some point and what it will mean to them. So thinking about the end in mind, whether it's a book or it's just having them organized or it's having them on a thumb drive or a hard drive that you can share with your siblings and your children, it doesn't matter. It really is a no judgment zone. You can choose whatever you want that to look like, and there is a way to get there. There's a solution for everything. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the recommended tools that if you're getting started on your own, just some basic things that you can have as you're working through your collection. Having a dedicated space and preparing that space so that you have a place to go to when you want to work on it, because if you have to put it away every time and pull it back out every time, you'll start to lose interest. Gathering up your collection is one of the first steps. Then the initial pre-sort, what that's going to look like. Reducing the volume. Sometimes just reducing the volume of the collection can be very satisfying. I know it is for me when people bring their collections in, and even just within the first hour, I can get in those boxes and kind of move things around and get things consolidated in a way that it just feels better. And often I'll send them a picture and say, here's what it looks like already. And then is there a point in time at which you hire a professional to help, right? It could be the whole thing, it could be a part of it, it could be the end when you want to do a book, it could be whatever piece that you really don't want to do, you can hire a professional to help with that. So this is a pretty good list of questions. I bet everybody can find a question on here that says, yes, that's why I'm here, right? You don't know where to start, or you've started this project half a dozen times and you get stuck. And you find yourself starting at the same place every time, right? And getting stuck at the same place. maybe you're ready to downsize, or you're ready to move, or you know, your children, you're now empty nesters, and you're trying to, you know, clean out that spare room. You're feeling like the photo gatekeeper. You're the one that has all the photos. People are asking, when are you gonna do something with that box of photos mom gave you? Or, you know, brother Joe gave you. Maybe you just wanna reclaim some space, whether it's a closet or a basement, or an attic. And I'll just say now, get your photos out of the attic and the basements if that's where you've got them. That's probably step number one that I didn't include in here. But that's probably the best thing that you can do right away for your photos, is get them out of those places where the temperature and the humidity is not controlled. I have a lot of people come to us and they say, my kids don't care. They don't care about the photos. And my response to that is, they might not care right now, but they're eventually gonna care. They're also not gonna want to inherit your boxes of musty, moldy, gross photos that have been in the basement of the attic for 30 years, right? You stand a much better chance of them wanting those photos and looking through the photos if they're in a nice clean box and there's not 40,000 of them, right? So they will care eventually, and if they don't, too bad. Are we gonna know? Probably not. So begin with the end in mind. How are you gonna use your photos? What's the goal? A book, a box, a thumb drive, a family website? You wanna use it for your genealogy research? Am I gonna scan my photos? Am I gonna do it? Am I gonna have a professional do it? Who else is gonna want access to that? Right? Is it just you, or are you going to be sharing this with siblings and cousins? You know, how big is the network that you want to be able to share with? That will also dictate how you share them. Is there a deadline? Often we find that there's a deadline when somebody's moving, or somebody's died and they're clearing out the house. The family members that are clearing out the house are bringing us the box of photos because now they're having to stage the home to sell it, or clear the estate. Are there parts of your collection that are at higher risk than others? Are some of the photos or the documents, are they more fragile? Are they at risk because of moisture? Are they already starting to smell bad? Are you starting to see damage of moisture or bugs, mice, all that stuff, fun things. So sometimes that's where you're going to start. You're going to start with those highest risk, right? And in today's age, and we're not going to really talk about it too much, but sometimes our digital photos are at a high risk because they're not being backed up somewhere. If the only place that your photos are on your phone, and you're not backed up somewhere, most people have iCloud turned on, but if you drop your phone in the toilet and you don't have iCloud turned on, you know what happens to your photos? Or you don't know your password.
Right? That covers everything.
Yes. So some of the basic tools that we recommend and that we generally always have in our shop, we have nitrile gloves that we handle the photos with when client projects come in. We especially handle photos, negatives, any of those fragile materials with nitrile gloves. Some people like cotton gloves, some people like nylon. I don't know what your preference is as an archivist, but
Or gloves off for a careful handling sort of institution?
yes, yeah. I learned, because I used to be very gloves on, but with papers and documents, that it's better not to handle with gloves. Make sure your hands are clean, because you want to be able to feel the paper and not tear anything, right? Having a photo-safe pencil, I think I have one around here. You can order these off of Amazon. I have some resources at the end of this slideshow. But it's a really soft tip, so you can write, and it's kind of almost a waxy feel to it.
And unavailable at any of the stores, framing stores, or any
Probably,
of those places?
Yeah, you can probably get them there. I usually get them a box at a time off of Amazon or from Archival Methods, which is one of the.
And they're just called photo safe pencils?
Stablo is one of the brands.
Okay.
I'll leave it up here, you can take a look at it. But you could literally wipe it off the back of a photo if you wanted to with a soft cloth, but it's not gonna smear, it's not gonna transfer ink to the photo that it's next to. It's also because it's soft, you're not pressing, you're not making an indentation into the photo if you're writing any information on the backs of those photos. 4x6 index cards and 2x2 stickies. That is my, I don't have it with me, but that is my kind of temporary go-to. So when I'm dividing out photos and we're sorting out photos, right? Maybe we're sorting chronologically, I'm gonna write on a sticky note, 1972 Disney. And I'm gonna, actually I have my other box with me. I'm gonna take my index card and I'm gonna put the sticky so that it sticks up so I can see it. And that's my temporary solution of a divider. And then once the whole collection's done, then we go back and we print real labels and put them on the dividers. But having those sticky notes is kind of nice because you can stick them on there and you can write any information that you need to. You can transfer information from the envelopes if you're removing envelopes from the
But
collection.
not on the photos.
You could write it on the back of the photo if you wanted to.
No, I mean stickies.
Yeah, I don't put the stickies on. Sometimes I'll put a sticky on the back of a photo if I need it there, but it's only a temporary solution. Like I would never leave it on there permanently.
No.
Usually I have them in a way that they're sticking up so that I see them, so that I don't accidentally leave any behind. But sometimes people will write notes on stickies and put them on the back of the photo, and then when we're doing the digitizing work, and this could apply to you too, you flip the photo over and you digitize that. So then you have the front and the back without having written on the photo. So that could be a solution from a digitizing standpoint and getting that information, connected to the photo. Archival boxes or, even shoe boxes temporarily, just as a temporary housing place while you're doing your sorting. Because you're not gonna do your final sort into boxes with labels until the very end. So having a shoe box or just some temporary thing to be able to stack things in and put things away as you've organized them, you can put them away. Archival envelopes for negatives. If you are going to have your negatives digitized, you can pull them out of the lab envelopes that they came in, the CVS, Walgreens store lab envelopes, and remove the negatives from there and put them in an archival sleeve, and then have those digitized.
Does that need to be one negative per sleeve, or can you put all from one roll, let's say, in a?
Usually one roll in an envelope. I mean, these are snapshots of our lives. There's a balance, right? From a cost perspective, if you were to do one envelope per sleeve, it's gonna get kind of expensive to do that.
As long as it's not doing damage, that's what I'm.
Yeah, so you just be careful. You wanna make sure you're handling them with gloves, that you're not like, reaching them around together in there, that they're scratching each other and that, scratching off any of the emulsion. Having some plastic bins, it just gives you the ability, again, plastic bins are kind of a temporary solution because you wouldn't want to permanently store in a plastic bin that's tight because you're also storing or locking in potential moisture and that. So, but having temporary plastic bins are just a nice way to be able to close things up, so that the cat doesn't get in there or the dog, right? Just having a way that you can kind of protect things. I have on here masks. We probably all have those now. These are good if you are pulling things out that are dusty, or you think there could be rodent droppings, those kind of things. If you feel like you need to protect yourself, if you have asthma, I would highly recommend
Insulation from the attic.
Yeah, insulation from the attic. I would highly recommend any kind of, some kind of a mask just to protect yourself when you're working in there, especially if there is any kind of a smell to it, right? And then a garbage bin or a bag. Yes, garbage. Yes, you can throw things out. I give you all permission to throw things out. And the other tool that I did mention on that list is tell your family. Now you know you and you know your family. Some family can be helpful, some family will not be. Pick wisely. That's all I can say. But let people know what you're working on because they may show up with some photos that you didn't know that you had in your family and that you might be able to add to the collection. And if they know that you're doing it and you're actively, preparing things and taking good care of them, they may be willing to hand it over and say, hey, can you add this in? And then everybody gets a copy, right? So telling family can be actually very beneficial. Sometimes not. Just depends on your family. But you know who they are. All right, so preparing your space. Get the grumpy cat off the table. dedicate some space to this project. I used to actually go to people's homes and we would work from their dining room table. And that was always a motivator for them because they were gonna have guests coming over for Thanksgiving. And so they had a good deadline. I gotta get this table clear by the time Thanksgiving occurs. So again, you know you and what motivates you. You could have a spare bedroom with a spare bed as kind of a nice flat work surface, place where you could actually close the door if you needed to. You can leave the cat and dog outside the room. But a nice big wide surface that's clear of all the other stuff is a good place to work. Usually when I would work with clients, we would work the table. We would have our index cards and our sticky notes, and we'd throw out our photos onto those piles, and at the end of a session, I'd gather up all of those piles and put them in the box. And then the next time, we'd start all over again. And the beauty is that if you're gonna have things digitized and you're naming things from a chronological standpoint, like you have the year first, right? You know, on a computer, everything's gonna show up chronologically, right? So if you're gonna have things digitized and say you found some photos from 1972 Disney World, and then the next time you worked on your photos, you found 20 more photos that said 1972 Disney World. Well, just start a new batch, because eventually those are all gonna come together digitally. There's really some cool magic that happens in all of that. So it's not like you have to be like, oh, 1972 Disney, you're in here looking. You don't have to do that yet, right? Just make a new batch and put them in. And it doesn't have to be exact. Let go of the exact. Because anything that you do is going to be better than it is right now, right? So it's always going to be up. You're always going up in the right direction. Sorry, I got off on a tangent there. So make sure you have a room at the door if you're in the spare bedroom, and that's going to be where you're working. Have some plastic bins with your lids. Have all your materials ready. And again, know thyself. Know what's good for you. When I work with people in their home, 3 to 4 hours was the tops, right? 1 hour wasn't enough. 2 hours, you were just kind of getting in the groove of sorting. At 3 hours, you've made some good progress. 4 hours, you've definitely made good progress, but now people are starting to kind of go down that other slope of like, oh my God, I can't do it anymore. So know yourself and what works for you as far as timing, and just pace yourself, because it's, how many decades did it take for it to get to the business, right? So it's going to take some time to get those decks cleared. So really the first step, this is where people get kind of hung up because they want to start organizing right now. The first thing that you want to do is gather everything up and just get it all in one place so you can kind of see what volume you have, what the collection looks like. Do I have a lot of videos? Do I have a lot of slides? Do I have a lot of negatives? Do I have just boxes of loose photos? Getting all of that together and gathered up is really the first best step, because that will also start to dictate where you start. Sometimes you want to start with what makes the biggest dent, because you need that momentum. Again, know thyself. Getting back to what gives you the biggest momentum and leap forward, and you can start to see where changes have occurred. Sometimes it's with the slides. You've got 20 boxes of carousels of slides that are taking up half your closet. Those slides, so those carousels can hold anywhere from like 80 to 140, I think is the high end of the carousels.
Tons of those.
Yeah, so,
Forgot about them.
sorry. Sometimes slides though are the easiest to start with. You're gonna see the biggest dent. This box holds 1,200 slides.
Okay. Get them out of the
So,
carousels.
yeah, so 1,200 slides, so that's 12 boxes. That could be 12 boxes that are stacked up somewhere, right?
Where do you get those printed so you know what you're looking at? I mean, you can tell roughly, but how good a picture it is or whether it's worth.
Now you're getting into a little details.
Oh.
But you could do a light table
Oh.
and a loop, if you wanna look at them. You'll get pretty good at it. Building a framework around any of your organizing, and slides are actually fairly easy, is maybe you're only gonna keep the ones and digitize the ones that have people in them.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad's trip to Big Ben with no people in it. Do I care about Big Ben?
Right.
I can find that on the internet if I really want a picture of Big Ben, or I could go there myself. It might mean something to Mom and Dad, but there comes a point where the volume is too much. So it can actually be pretty fast and easy to get through your slides with a little light table. You lay all the slides out and you pick out just the ones that have the people on it, and those are the ones that you keep and you scan.
What do you do with the ones that you don't scan, and then you just toss them?
You know that garbage bag I was telling you about? No, you don't have to. It is truly a personal preference. If those slides are meaningful to you and they bring joy to you, then you keep them. You can always separate them out in a way that, say you have a carousel of 100 photos, right? Or 100 slides, and 30 of them have people in them, and you wanna have those digitized. The other 70, you can just put them in a stack in the back, put a little card in there that said no scan, so that you know that, I didn't scan them, I scanned these.
Kicking the can down the road a little bit.
It is, sometimes people need that, but,
But if you were gonna throw them away, you just toss them in the trash.
yeah, they're not recyclable, unfortunately.
Okay. No, I like that idea. No, for the ones that you don't want.
Yeah,
There's always so much, purpose in coming here,
mhm.
in fact is to,
What can you and can't you?
yeah, exactly.
You can throw out anything that you want.
Thank you.
As long as your spouse agrees, that's gonna be my hurdle.
Or doesn't know. Just saying.
Point.
And I say that, I'm a little flip about that, but people do come to us and we do this piece of it. And I have this conversation with people frequently. You are not gonna remember those duplicates or the 20 pictures of almost the same face at the park. We're gonna pick the one that is the best, or the two, right? Like, set yourself some guidelines. Say, if I find 5 near duplicate photos, I'm gonna only keep 2. And give yourself some ground rules and decide, because that's gonna help the process go a little bit faster. Because if you get hung up on every single picture, this is where you get stuck and it makes it hard. And this is something I've thrown around to a couple of people, I don't know if anybody's ever tried it or not, but find a friend that also wants to do this process, and you work on each other's photos. Because you're not as emotionally attached to those photos, so it might make it a little bit easier for you to curate out friends'
Sometimes they see
photos.
things differently than you do too, and you point out something
Yeah, could be.
they didn't notice or
Yeah.
took for granted.
Like, give yourself some framework. If anybody wants one, I have I have a planner that I use, that I send to clients, and you can fill it out, and it gives you a framework both for gathering photos and thinking about, do I wanna have the backs of my photos scanned? Do I wanna scan my negatives, or do I wanna scan my photos? Like, there's decisions like that you kinda make along the way. But if you're thinking about it ahead of time, it makes those decisions a little bit easier. And there's a place for you to fill out your timeline, which also helps when you're trying to date photos, right? So anybody can email me and I'll send you that planner if you'd like it. So think about all the places where those photos might be hiding. Closets, under the bed, drawers, the attic, the basement, the car. I had a long time a picture stuck up in, up in the visor. Every time we put the visor down, there's Declan. So think about photos that are in frames. If photos that are in frames likely were there in the frame because they were important to you. They might be some of the most important ones that you wanna have digitized. And they're probably also some of the highest risk photos that you have because they might not be in UV glass and they might be starting to fade. So capturing those images now would be a good place to start on those. You can always return them to the frame, or better yet, once it's scanned, you make a reprint and you frame that one, right? Because then you can protect the original from further deterioration. And some people are taking stuff out of frames because they're downsizing or they're moving and they want to have a whole new look. So now they're taking the photos out of the frames permanently. That is also a huge downsizing move, right? The frames and the albums. So if you have albums, you're gathering up your albums. I'm not saying you're going to do anything with them yet, but you want to have your entire collection kind of in one place so you can really get a good look at what you've got as a whole. If you're finding things together, keep them together for now. So if you have envelopes with prints and negatives in them, keep them together for now. We'll get to those a little bit later. People will get stuck here. You're going to start looking through your photos. Oh, there's duplicates in here. I can leave those out. That's not this stage. So this stage is just gathering everything up, so you can see how big your mess is. And you know, last line there, it can be kind of ugly right now, but don't let that discourage you. Things always look worse before they look better. Some of the materials that you might find in your collection: printed photos, albums, negatives, slides, memorabilia, maybe documents or letters. The love letters are always kind of fun. Children's artwork, newspaper articles, along with the albums, you've got scrapbooks. Obituaries, those memorial cards, VHS tapes, videotapes, your film, your audio reels. All that stuff can be part of your collection. Doesn't mean you have to do something with all of it right now. You're gonna bite that elephant one at a time. Bite the elephant off. So these are all just parts of what you may find in that collection that is becoming your legacy, that you want to be able to turn over to somebody. So this initial pre-sort, can you tell my cat person? So this initial pre-sort is, you're gonna start now you've got everything gathered up, right? You've got your bedroom is filled with all your albums and your scrapbooks and your loose photos. This first step, second step I guess, is now putting like with like. So now you're gonna be consolidating. So all of the slides in one section, all of your albums maybe in a bin or two, all of your loose negatives, like we call them orphan negatives. If we have negatives that are just floating around in a box somewhere and we don't know what they belong to, we put them to the side, we start a small box, and we put those negatives in there. If you have envelopes, those CVS envelopes with all your photos in them, some of those envelopes are going to contain negatives and some are not. If you think that you're going to digitize your negatives over your prints, then you kind of want to separate out the envelopes that have prints only and the envelopes that have prints with negatives. So typically what we do when we're consolidating is we're going to have a box of just loose photos, because everybody's got loose photos somewhere, right? You got 5 in this drawer and 5 in that drawer and 10 off the refrigerator. You're going to put all those in a box. Those are your loose photos. Then you're going to have a box with enveloped photos that don't have negatives for whatever reason. They're probably over here in this, those negatives are over here in this box of loose negatives somewhere, right? And then you're gonna have a box of envelopes with the prints that contain negatives. So this is the like with like, right? Each of those bins then kind of has a purpose, because that's how you're gonna work through your collection then, based on the type of media that you're working with, right? If you find negatives with your prints, keep them together for now. One of the steps will be taking a look at those negatives and figuring out do they actually, in fact, belong with the prints that are in this envelope? So,
Do you prefer to copy from an actual photo as opposed to the negative, or the other way around?
So, you're gonna get optimal results from the negative, because that's basically your original. A print is a copy of the negative. So if we're digitizing the print, we're making a copy of a copy. So each time that degrades. It can be a small, noticeable, or unnoticeable difference. It just depends on you.
The first generation. However many times you do it for other family members, though.
It's really, some people are gonna notice a difference between an image from a negative. I'm gonna notice a difference from a negative image and something that we made from a print. I'm gonna see the difference there. You're gonna see the film grain, just depends on how closely that you're looking. If you have photos that, negatives just stand the test of time much better than prints do. Prints wear down, they fade, they get wrinkled, negatives get wrinkled too, but they have a tendency to, it's gonna be more noticeable damage over a course of time. If you have really old negatives, I would absolutely digitize the negatives over the prints, because the prints have just,
So digitizing negatives and digitizing slides, what's the best way to do that without sending it out? Do you have some kind of a printer or?
some people use a scanner. There are some scanners out there that you can purchase that you can digitize negatives. There are some like consumer grade units that you can buy off Amazon and that, you know, people are selling, but you're not gonna get archival quality images if that's not that big of a deal to you.
Can you go to a copy center and get a good quality image?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
So
Mostly
if you were gonna send it out, where would you send the slides?
Go to Archivers.
Of course.
Sorry.
But you want two of them pictures, why do you have to set the whole thing off?
Yeah, so we use cameras for everything. And macro lenses that, you know, we're taking very close-up pictures. So we're not putting anything on a scanner, we use what's called copy scan work, and.
So it's a special camera,
Yeah, it's a DSLR camera.
and it's on a light box.
Well, we put a light box in there if we're doing negatives and slides, yes.
So that's the preferred method.
It is, it gets you a good quality image,
Good,
yeah.
because it's nice to be able to do it yourself rather than send it out.
Yep, for sure, yep. And people are setting up their own DSLRs to do this. I mean, if you have a huge quantity, it might make sense. You just wanna do a little bit of research to make sure you have the right camera and the right lens and, you know.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there are some scanners out there that you can purchase to do it. It just takes forever. Like
So
the
it's quicker,
scanners take
it's
a really
quicker
long
with the
time.
camera.
Much faster, and you have more control over it. Yeah, like we have photographers that work for us, so they understand lighting, they understand color balance, they understand all of those things. So we just have a lot more control when we're using cameras.
Not a simpler way.
I don't know if I'd call it simpler, but yeah. All right, so loose photos for now, just group them together, all your loose photos. Because the loose photos can be probably the most overwhelming part of the job because they're just
You gotta
different
figure where they
sizes
go.
and, yeah, different sizes and everything. So reducing the volume, these are some steps, sorry for all the little teeny tiny words here. I'll read down through these for those in the back that probably can't see these, but this can be, some people like to do this, some people don't, it depends. If you're downsizing, removing photos from your albums may make sense. If nobody's looking at those albums anymore, they've been boxed up and in your basement, it might make sense to take the time to remove your favorite photos from those albums and only have those scanned.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
My mother-in-law was very fond of the sticky albums that
Oh, yeah.
residue and stain on photos, and sometimes the photo actually sticks there permanently.
Yeah.
Any tips on that, or you just have what you have?
So one of the tips that I would say is that if you try to remove, and some of those, you could have one album and some of the photos are falling off the pages and other ones,
Exactly.
you can't,
Yeah.
they won't
for
budge.
life.
You can use dental floss sometimes to get under an edge.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's good tip.
Toothpick.
I think they're mostly.
I wouldn't use a toothpick, but the toothpick, dental
That's
floss.
Yeah.
Slide something under it.
Yeah, like, but you gotta be patient, it's a tedious process. If you think that it's gonna do damage to the photo by removing it from those sticky pages, then you wanna have it scanned first, right? Have those, and when you do camera scanning, you're not feeding anything through an automated feeder, so it makes it pretty easy to peel back that plastic, digitize the photo, and then you can move on. And some people will choose at that point then not to remove the photo at all, and then they toss the page. I mean, there are people now that are having things digitized, and they are tossing their original photos. Maybe not all of them, but some, and you're like, what? Yeah, some people are, you know, it really kind of, it's a generational thing I'm starting to see, that I would say 40, 50-year-olds are saying, I don't want all these photos anymore. I now have them on my computer, I can look at them, I have them safely backed up. They might keep some special ones.
I'm too much of a traditionalist that.
I know.
Yeah, it's
Certain
hard.
photos, you know.
You can't see them at a family gathering if you do that.
So there's something about an actual photo
Yeah.
that's different than a scanned photo.
Absolutely. But there are also things that you can do with the scan photo, because some folks are saying, I'm just gonna do it, because then I can still, it doesn't require technology to page through it, I can still look at that, I still have that tactile reaction by being able to flip the pages. It really is a personal preference, and you have to decide what's right for you and your family, and you know how many people you're gonna tick off if you throw those photos out. You know, and maybe that's the way around, and you find somebody else to take them once you're done.
How durable do you think digital images are?
Was that a trick question?
I've heard an archivist comment that maybe our microfilm collection is more durable than the backup. Well, it's the backup to the digitized version is the same thing. Probably want to say both.
Yeah, there was a whole article floating around, I can't remember what the guy's name was now, Digital Dark Ages. Do you remember that?
remember your guy's name,
Yeah, and he expressed that as a concern, because people don't back up their photos, like, they're not backing things up. So that's always my concern when I have somebody that wants to dispose of everything once it's all digitized. You have to promise me you will back up in multiple places, and that you've handed thumb drives to other family members, so that there is some redundancy floating around out there.
And the thumb drive is safe.
Well, nothing's safe if you're not backing it up. Like, you don't wanna only have them on your thumb drive. So we're delivering
But I'm not
images
gonna
on a
find
thumb drive.
in 5 years that a thumb drive won't fit in the next generation.
Oh, you absolutely will find yourself in that. Yeah. I mean, this laptop doesn't have a traditional, you know, thumb drive in it anymore. USB, I can't ever remember. A and
You know, we
C.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have to carry a fancy adapter with me so I can plug things into it.
Yeah, I
So-
never have it on a CD.
Yeah, CDs and CDs, we are struggling with those now, even when they come in as part of a collection and we're trying to copy the images off of them because they don't have those anywhere else. If they're scratched or we don't have the right reader, and we've got multiple readers, we have stuff that comes in and we can't get them to read on anything. And I know there's stuff on there. So you have to continue to play an active role in migrating your digital images forward and having them backed up someplace. It's that personal responsibility, sorry. There's no real good set it and forget it.
So, this may not be lasting or not. I take my favorite pictures, digital pictures, and send them off to, I use Snapfish,
Yep.
so that at least they're there.
Right.
I don't know how secure that is, so then I also get hard copies of
Yeah.
those.
Okay.
You know, get culling
Yeah.
every step of the way.
So if you're getting hard copies really are a form of backup of your photos, right? So if something happened to those original digital images out there on Snapfish and you couldn't get them back, you would at least be able to rescan your printed photos that you got from there, right? So like you kind of have, there's a circle there that you can continue to move in.
Am I a fool to think that's sort of a backup?
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit. So like the Snapfishes and the Shutterflies, they're a great place to send your photos and have them printed. Like if you're a printer, you like to print your photos, they're a great place to have your photos printed. I would not consider that a backup. When we do digital organization jobs, and it includes a Snapfish or a Shutterfly, and they're like, I don't think I have these photos anywhere else. If we have to get them from Shutterfly, what happens when you download them from a Shutterfly is it strips the metadata. So I get those photos down, and now all of those photos are dated February 27th, 2024, instead of the date that they were actually taken.
Yes, that is an issue,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So those websites were never meant, and I don't think their intention was ever to be a place for you to store your photos. It's a place to upload your photos and get reprints. I think it just kind of materialized into that, probably kind of accidentally.
They only have like 14 years in the pictures.
Do you have them anywhere else?
Yeah.
Okay, alright, good. Alright,
Thumb drive, right?
what was that?
I said a thumb drive, right?
Multiple places. Redundancy is the key, right? Redundancy of your original images is the key. All right, so remove the garbage. So now we're downsizing the collection. We've gathered everything up. Now we're really kind of reducing the volume of the amount of space that this collection takes up. We're going to remove the garbage. There's always garbage in those boxes. The extra papers, the coupons, like get rid of that stuff. You'd be amazed at how much you can throw out just by getting rid of the garbage. Old receipts. Now sometimes those receipts have good clues. There might be dates, right? And those are good things to then notate on those envelopes, so that when you get them digitized, you can have those photos named with that date. So, be looking for the little clues while you're sorting through those boxes. Let's see here. Get rid of any unneeded paper, any old boxes, old containers that aren't photo safe. Remove your non-photo items from the collection. Sometimes there's cameras and camera filters, and sometimes there's film in there that was never processed or never even used. Take those things out. They aren't really part of this collection. They are maybe nostalgic in some way, but they really don't need to be in this part of the collection while you're organizing. Transfer any identifying information from photo envelopes. So if you are taking photos out of an envelope and you're using your index card and your stickies, and that's 1972 Disney, you're gonna take the photos out of that envelope, make your sticky, put your photos in there, and then move on to the next one. But any information that was on that envelope, if you had something written on there, transfer it. Or if you know you're gonna send your photos off for digitizing, you could leave them temporarily in those envelopes. Some services will transfer that information for you, right? So that when we digitize photos, if it comes in with a date and a place or any kind of event information, we're gonna use that information in our file and folder names.
Where would you send camera film that hasn't been developed?
You could try,
The dark room.
Dodge Chrome.
Dodge Chrome?
Yeah, there's a place called Dodge Chrome in Silver Spring. I think they also have a location.
Because I'd be very hesitant to send it to, some local drugstore.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that. I don't even know if the local drugstores do film development anymore.
Walgreens here still does, but the quality is
Not great.
not great.
Yeah.
Dodge Chrome, did you say?
Dodge Chrome, like the car Dodge.
There's a company out of California called the Dark Room,
Oh, okay.
and you can send stuff to them.
Yeah, there's a few places around that are old style darkroom development. Local is Dodge Chrome, and they're a small business, like we send
That
people
would be
there
great,
all the
thank
time.
you.
Yeah.
And Silver Spring, did you say?
Yes, and I think maybe they also have a location in Rockville or Bethesda. I feel like they have 2 locations.
Still not close to Sykesville.
Still not terribly close. And I think also when you now get film developed by them, they probably also will digitize those images, right? They'll probably automatically turn them into digital images for you. All right, so then school portraits, that's always a fun one. That one, you can reduce the number drastically. Keep 1 copy. We like the 5x7s, mostly because it makes a nice digital image and it'll also fit nicely in these boxes. Depending on the size of your box, like these boxes fit up to 5x7s. So that's why we keep the 5x7, because it fits in there. If it doesn't, I go with the smaller size.
But if you got a larger size, the quality would probably come out better if you're digitizing, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. Because it all came from the same negative, and my personal preference is a 5x7 or even a smaller, like 4x6. Because we get in really close, so we're gonna get the same amount of detail regardless of which size it is. And if you're doing an 8x10 or 11x14, it ends up being a really huge file. Right? Which then is the whole storage issue, right? So, duplicates and near duplicates. That's one way you can start to reduce the size of the collection. At this stage of the game, you could be pulling out those envelopes and saying, I only want to keep the people photos and I don't want to keep any duplicates. And you could be doing some major sorting at this point. Those envelopes from the probably 80s, early 90s, it was like buy 1 set, get 20 sets free.
Yeah.
Like, who needed that? So, keep one. And that can be a kind of fun, fast process. I like that. I love it when projects come in with lots of duplicates because it just feels like you're making progress. Purging the sunsets, landscapes, poor quality. Again, personal preference. If you are a professional photographer and landscapes are your thing, you might not be purging those images. But if these are really just your snapshots from your family, maybe you keep a couple that bring those memories back to you. But if you've got one with your family in that same background, and then you've got one with just the background, maybe keep the one with the family in the background. Right? I say here, be ruthless if you can, and keep on your best. And I would bet that you could probably reduce the size of your collection by 1/3 to 1/2 without too much trouble. Just by getting rid of even the paper and the junk and the duplicates and the bad pictures. And then near duplicates are similar to the duplicates. Near duplicates, I think, are a bigger problem now with digital photos than they were with film, because we didn't take 10 pictures of the same thing because we had to pay to develop it. Now we're like, we hold down that button, and you end up with 20 photos, and you're like, oh no, and then you just skip it. I do that myself. If I have, 5 pictures of practically the same thing, and I start to try weeding out, I'll be back and forth. Well, I don't know. It's hard.
It's a torture.
Yes. You wouldn't be here if this was easy. Right? If this was an easy process, none of you would be in this room, I'd be talking to myself. Am I running out of time?
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, I think I'm almost done. When should I hire a professional? When you only have to do something once. So that could be the scanning process, right? We've been doing this a long time. Let us do the scanning piece of it for you. You do the organizing, we do the scanning and rehousing. Don't let technology be in your way or get in your way of getting this done, right? Hire for the things that you only do one time, hire for the technical expertise, when the volume is just too overwhelming. I have many people coming to us now where they're clearing out their parents' house, they've got their own photos that are physical, and now they're also pairing in their digital images. So when the volume is just too big, look for help, ask a friend. If you're on a deadline, sometimes it helps to just have somebody else do it. If you only want to do this one time, you don't want to start over and over again. Or sometimes you just lack the desire to do it. I don't want to do this, I have better things to do with my time than scan my photos. Question?
You mentioned the, what's it called? The photo safe pencil. Is there a tape that we can use when we're maybe putting it in a frame to hold it?
If you're putting it in a frame?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get, there is archival tape that you can use. Again, you probably don't have to go too crazy over that if it's a reprint. So I wouldn't use
So
a
it's safe
piece
to
of,
use a regular Scotch tape on most.
I mean, I probably wouldn't do that either, but, because I'm kind of a purist, but, I wouldn't use any
I mean, like
piece
some
of,
of ours, you know, you have to, it wasn't centered like it should have been, so you have to kind of tape it to something to
place.
get
Yeah, I mean, there is archival tape that you can find,
it. Okay.
that you can use. I still wouldn't use your original photo,
Oh, okay.
right? Have it, get it digitized and do that with your reprint.
Gotcha.
For albums, aren't there, slip pockets, like plastic archival slip pockets, if you wanna keep them in like a 3-ring binder?
Yeah,
And then photo safe,
Yeah, absolutely. And
In every size?
they come in different sizes, I think.
there are sleeves that come in different sizes, like
Yeah.
Archival Methods will sell, we have them, because sometimes we do binders for people where they wanna still be able to flip through their photos, so we'll do binder pages in multiple sizes, slide their photos in that, and then,
I like the binders, cause you can slip in extra pictures at any point, like date-wise.
yeah, it certainly makes it easy to manipulate if you wanna add photos in, yeah, for sure.
If you're gonna use something to label the date, mom and dad, or whatever, but not necessarily right on the photo, can you still use that photo
You can
grade
use this to
pencil?
write on the back of the photo.
No, I mean for people to see, so we know this couple from that couple when they were young, sometimes they may look similar or something. You're labeling so that people will know what they're looking at.
Digitally?
No, physically.
So, like in an album, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the album, but yeah, some of the albums,
The pencil
like they
still
have,
do that adequately?
well, I don't know what you're writing on. What are you writing on?
I don't know.
I think
It's on the photo maybe.
I wouldn't write on the surface of the photo with anything.
Okay. For your shot.
Vague.
Nothing wrong, gonna hold you to it.
Here, there's some resources there. It really just depends on the project. Scanning is per piece. Organizing is by the hour.
Per piece, does it depend on the size, or does it depend on?
A little bit, but anything under 8x10 is one price. Over 8x10
But
is
if you're
a different
scanning negative strip,
Mhm.
and you're charging me each
Yes.
photo, I guess.
Each
Okay.
image, yeah.
So it's
per
not per
image.
strip.
Correct.
And does it then depend on what size I want you to regenerate it to?
No, because we're not necessarily resizing it, we're creating a digital image that you could then make into a 3.5 by 5 image, or you could make it larger if you wanted to reprint it. Like if you're looking to reprint it somewhere, you could then upload our digital image to Shutterfly and reprint it in a variety of sizes.
Okay.
Yeah. And another company that I like for reprints, somebody asked me about reprints, we're talking about reprints, is MPix.
I've used MPix.
Yeah, they're kind of one of my favorites. They are,
The M or the E?
it's an
MPix.
mpix.com.
They're great.
And
Is
they
this
are,
mail away?
yeah, so you upload your digital images and then they'll send you the reprints. And they have a lot of different sizes, especially if you have some of those older photos that are kind of unusual sizes that you want to reprint. And they're the consumer version of the lab that we use, of the commercial lab that we use when we do.
But we've got to
reprints.
send them a negative, we can't send
You
them
don't
an
send them
original.
the negative, no.
Use
If you get them
digital.
digital, if you have them, if you
Excuse
have the
me, that's
digital
what I meant,
images,
digitized.
then you just upload the digital image.
Okay.
And then they can
I don't
send you a
think
reprint. Well, that's why you're here. Any other questions?
I'm sure it'll crop up.
One of the ways you said what are some other ways to, organize your pictures versus chronologically?
So some people will do by event or by person. Person gets a little tricky because you end up with a picture that has 3 different people in it and you're like, oh, what do I do with this? If you can do it more by era or chronologic, then later you can add metadata and facial recognition that then allows you to be able to search, and you would be able to share those photos with the specific people that you wanted. Either one has its challenges. And with chronological, it doesn't have to be perfect, even if you just know the decade. If you know it's the 1980s, put it in a pile that says 1980s, because at least once you're done, you could go back to that now smaller pile and say, okay, I think this was probably 88, and this group was probably 80 to 85. Then at least you have a smaller group of photos to work with. So you don't have to be exact.
Is this display organization or digitization organization?
So the organization that you do initially is going to carry over into your digital organization. Because you're gonna hand, whoever, or if you're gonna do it yourself, you're gonna take this batch of photos and you're gonna digitize everything that's in here and you're gonna name it Jenkins Heritage. And then all of those photos will be found within that digital folder. So you're basically creating a digital folder and then all the images sit in that folder like an envelope, right?
And we can label them individually if we digitize them? Okay.
Can you tell me what's on your book?
So, which parts?
I don't know, are those books of photos, like family?
Yeah, so these were albums, and anybody's welcome to take a look at these. So this was a church youth group, several years, 1962 to 1973. It was a church youth group, and they had an original big scrapbook that was falling apart, and it was just breaking down and falling apart. So we digitized all of the images. The pastor wrote the stories behind all of it. We reached out to youth members that he was still in touch with. They wrote stuff, what that youth group meant to them, and that was included in here as well. So that was kind of a recreation of that book, but in a more modern way, and then they all got a copy. This was actually a World War II journal from a prisoner of war. And we digitized the pages because the book was falling apart, and the family was concerned that if they kept turning pages in it.
I just want to say in here with the journals too, we find here at the museum too that kids these days cannot read cursive, write everything in print.
Yes.
on
I
their
think
photos.
that's a crime.
Yeah. I mean, it is a crime,
Well,
but
but you know what
please
though?
do that.
AI is gonna fix that too
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
AI is, you could probably run that through AI and it would translate it. So,
Or you could teach your kids cursive.
you could, it's gonna be lost art, for sure.
Yeah.
In here, these are the slide boxes, long in there.
And where did you get that container?
So this is archival methods.
Okay.
Yep, and the people at Archival Methods are amazing. So they, like if you called them and said, I have a bunch of newspapers, I don't really know how to contain them, they're gonna tell you exactly what you need to contain them from supply standpoint.
I have some old newspapers, Sykesville Herald, that I've been trying to figure out how to copy, because I have numerous people that want them. How do you do that? Because they're gonna have to stay the same size in order to read them.
Well, once it's digitized, you can expand it on the screen as big as you want.
They want physical,
Like they want a physical.
copy
Oh, yeah.
of the paper, yeah.
Well, that's just crazy. Paper. We're here talking about how to get rid of the paper. Yeah, I don't,
So that's
I
the
guess
best
you
thing,
could have
is
it
to
reprinted.
digitize it.
If you are living locally and you are interested in having better access to doing these yourself and you want the overhead cameras and that kind of thing, Westminster in their makerspace does have an overhead camera, but the maximum size is like this big.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work for a
and
newspaper.
They, I don't know if they have the capacity to do negatives, however, if you live locally, you may also know that the Eldersburg Library is due for a complete overhaul and they are looking for what things to put in it. This would be the sort of thing that you may want to suggest.
Yeah, and I think Howard County, I think the Glenwood has a makerspace as well, and I think they have cameras in there. And I don't know if they have the overhead in there or not, but yeah, most of the overheads that they have in those places are smaller. But what you could do is you could take multiple pictures of it. Like you could have them do an overhead, or you could do an overhead in pieces, with a little bit of overlap, and then there is some technology that allows you to be able to stitch it together.
We are past time here tonight.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for coming. I have recorded this presentation and we'll be uploading it online with the presentation. So if you need to watch it again or show some more relatives so they can go through their photos. Should you find anything that is about Sykesville's history, the Gatehouse would love to have a copy of your image or your video or what have you. Thank you for coming and thank you, Rachel Jenkins,
Yeah, thank you for
sharing with
having
us
me.
tonight.